Namaskar, I'm Ashok Vyas. Inside Tonight with Ashok Vyas. Today, we will be discussing the role of United Nations, keeping in mind the aim of maintaining peace in the world, bringing countries together for dialogue, and what is happening with Russia and Ukraine, and where is the situation or effectiveness with which United Nations has any teeth to make any significant changes. We'll also discuss the implications and importance of having declared 15th March as Islamophobia, a day dedicated to International Day dedicated to Islamophobia. So all this, I have the pleasure of welcoming Guru Dileep ji, who closely works with the United Nations on especially interfaith related issues. Dr. Dheeraj Kaul joins us. He is very active with many media outlets related to important current themes, including Russia, Ukraine, the Kashmiri files, and all that. So we'll begin by requesting Guru Dileep ji to weigh on the role of United Nations briefly in terms of since you are going to that building every day, and we being in New York are in kind of hosting the headquarter of United Nations. So you go there as a NGO, but overall, what are your thoughts about the role uh, and what should I say, relevance of United Nations?
Actually, I enjoy working with the NGOs and the diplomats at the United Nations, because that is only international forum we can sit and talk and discuss, try to avoid issues. But a lot of time I feel uncomfortable because 76th year UN celebrating its birthday, but still the world is in chaos. So many problems around the world. People are not cooperating to abolish nuclear weapons or taking care of people. That's the only thing always bothering me.
So, Guruji, let me read out from the website of United Nations, Dr. Dheeraj, where in terms of the purpose of United Nations, they explicitly say that, of course, it was founded in 1945 and after the Second World War by 51 countries committed to maintaining international peace and security, developing friendly relations among nations, and promoting social progress, better living standards, and human rights. So, Dheeraj, one of the key purpose of United Nations is to keep peace throughout the world, and the second one is to develop friendly relations among nations. From that point of view, now let us move towards the situation that we are witnessing as a global citizen between Russia and Ukraine. Your take overall, Dheeraj.
Namaskar. Thank you for having me on the show. Like all of us know, like you rightly pointed out, what is the role of UN? You see, after World War I, there was a League of Nations, and the reason it was dismantled is because it totally failed to do what was it supposed to do, have peace. Because as you remember, millions and millions of lives were lost in World War I. Austro-Hungarian Empire was broken down, Iran, you name it, the Turkish Empire was broken down, and so much death and devastation. And around that time came the flu pandemic as well, which killed millions of people all across the world, especially in India with returning soldiers. But coming back to this current situation, I really feel the key is this: each nation has a right to be sovereign. Each sovereign nation has a right to decide its foreign policy, and countries have a right to include them in NATO or not. So somewhere, somehow, I feel that right of Ukraine as an independent country to decide to be a part of NATO was totally overlooked by an aggressor, which is Russia, and it has invaded Ukraine. As of today, you will be astonished to know around 44 million people are living in Ukraine. 10 million people have been displaced, out of which 3.5 million people have left the country. 2 million are in Poland, and rest of the country, Hungary, Romania, and so on and so forth, other places. But 6.5 million are internally displaced. As of today, 925 people have lost their life, and 78 people are seriously injured. These are official data, which always lags behind by weeks. Not to talk about the destruction of property, which obviously can be rebuilt, and cities like Mariupol, which has been devastated like anything. This is the largest
Yeah.
invasion, a
Yeah.
landlocked invasion after World War II on a European country. The point I'm trying to raise is, what was the fault of Ukrainian people? Who was supposed to protect Ukrainian? Was the Ukraine's fault that it gave away its deterrent nuclear weapons on the request of Russia and NATO? And when it come to them, everybody has lifted their hands. Thanks, the US government is fully supporting. Biden is there today. He's going to Warsaw to make the meeting with the president of Poland. But I think the human devastation could have been prevented if UN could have intervened from the point of Russia or from the point of West. The point of Russia was East first development of NATO. Could have UN come into the picture 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when Litva, Latvia was becoming a part of NATO.
So, Dheeraj, let me interrupt you and then we'll come back to you. But the point that you raised in the beginning of your expression was having Ukraine the right to decide on uh, its course of action with respect to its foreign relation, or whether it joins NATO or not. And then there are other historical nuances where how the NATO was formed, and when Russia was made into different, became like, was broken, to put it directly. And what was the understanding between NATO, and so all that also comes into play. And what are the concerns with which Russia was feeling threatened if NATO forces have their base right at its border, etc. So that is one side of it. But nobody would disagree with you that what is happening is something which we should not be a silent witness in this civilized, so-called civilized world, where we are individually as well as collectively, we all sing praise of having peace. But then what is happening is, of course, way away from the aspired state. Uh, Bringing back the role of United Nations, Guru Dileep ji, the way it is structured, and President Trump was very critical of the relevance or the effective role that United Nations is playing or can play. And even Prime Minister Modi earlier also talked about restructuring of United Nations. So what happens is, as individual or as an organization or as a nation, when you start depending on somebody, some force, be it political clout or the financial muscle of a particular country to help you sustain and go about your business, then you lose sight of your objective validity, as well as you don't have enough strength of conviction to speak the truth. And I'll bring this back to Dheeraj. But Guru Dilip ji, in the context of Russia-Ukraine war and the role that United Nations uh, could have played or should be playing, what is your analysis?
When you look at the bylaws with the UN, that has to be upgraded. Prime Minister Modi is correct. And remember, Shashi Tharoor, when he was running for the election, he said he want to make the change at the UN. People don't like that part. You see, 76 years, they are having the same rules and regulations. They have to upgrade every year. Life is changing all over the world. And that's a thing is not happening. So I hope in the future UN will make the change. Otherwise, same drama will go on and on. And there's a cling with the different groups are there. African community countries are there. Islamic countries are there. They have high majority, over 50 countries each groups, and they can run the decisions very well.
So
That
I'll
is
come, yeah, I'll come to the Islamic countries' role and recently what has happened in terms of UN resolution on Islamophobia. But Dheeraj, back to the way of preventing further escalation, where we are after 26 plus days witnessing devastation and loss of lives, and scenes that you would not like to see, and those who are experiencing it for no fault of theirs, as you said. But being a citizen of any country now has become something which puts certain responsibilities on you. And yet, whatever we say about democracy, I'm kind of thinking that at the end of the day, individual citizens feel helpless, whether it is America, India, any country, because so there is a collective wisdom that comes into play through the leadership. And talk to me, Dheeraj ji, in terms of the international community, including America and European countries, what different approach they could have taken so that we were not here in on the 26th day of Russia-Ukraine war?
I think that's a very smart question. I'd come straight to the answer because that's a very excellent question you've asked. I think the first should have been done, like you rightly said. NATO had made a deal when USSR was breaking that they will not expand eastward, and there will be buffer countries like Litva, Latvia, Estonia, Ukraine, Hungary, even Poland. But as time went by, they included them in NATO. And the whole point of North Atlantic Treaty Organization was to protect from USSR. So no USSR, no need of NATO. But again, it's a democratic world that has to be decided by the NATO countries. So they decided they will keep on. But you mind it. What did that do for NATO countries like Germany? That's the most robust economy of Europe was Germany. They were spending less than 0.5% of their money on defense. Just now they increased it to 2% and said 300 billion we will put in. So it saved a lot of money for them. And I don't want to go into politics, but Trump actually asked them, you should be paying us something back because we are spending billions of taxpayers' money to protect you. Recently, Germany bumped it up. What I would say, what would have been better when Russia started raising concern that you are expanding eastwards, there should have been a big meeting done by United Nations, bringing everybody. What are your concerns? ABC. So if these countries will come, what will you do? So at the end of the day, war has to be resolved by sitting on a table. So why cannot that be done before? Whose job it is to bring these countries together? United Nations again. Each and every country sends their soldiers for peacekeeping force and contributes. So world is like you rightly said, some onus comes on the people you elect. So world is very, very connected. And I think the second thing they could have done before this war came on, in the building of the troops was happening 6 to 8 months before last year from September. They should have started a big meeting to prevent this bloodshed, unnecessary children, elderly getting displaced. I come from a Kashmiri community. I know what is the pain of getting displaced and killed for no fault of yours. I mean, but the good thing is these people, it's not a good thing, but something satisfying that entire Europe has opened their arms and, houses for these people. But our community, when it came to Jammu, that was unfortunately not the scene.
Actually, Jammu was not even recognized neither through media nor through political leadership, and we'll come to that slightly in today's conversation also. But keeping in mind that so many countries have now, including America, started supporting at least financially.
Absolutely.
But what this is doing right now is to help them face Russia. So this is not going to add to the economy of Ukraine, or there is no peaceful existence of citizens right now. Now, in hindsight, and again, these if and but may not be helpful in moving forward, yet analytically just trying to understand the situation. When countries are ready to spend in such emergency situations, they could proactively do something using the same resources, which would not only help the development process but would prevent such sort of escalation. So that collective wisdom, we expect that United Nations should have the kind of strength, clarity, and vision to kind of make that happen. What is it that you feel, Guru Dileep ji, is lacking as far as UN role is concerned?
So one thing I want to say, Russia want to be part of the NATO. Then I think American presidents, he approached.
What are you saying? What are you saying? Russia doesn't want to be part of NATO.
Russia want to be earlier.
Wanted. He's right. Wanted.
So I think American presidents didn't like that idea. No, they want to make friendship. We should let them be part of it. And I'm a little concerned about the Russia is not supposed to attack any country, because Russia is one of the permanent member of the UN. They are in the leading position, like China, France, or America, not supposed to touch any other countries. So
especially
that,
with the veto power that they have.
yeah, they have the veto power. Of course, Russia has a good relationship with India. That's fine, but still they have
So,
a responsibility.
Dheeraj, the veto power, whatever might have been the philosophy behind it, but it makes the whole United Nations redundant in the situations like we just faced. Initially, Russia vetoed because it is the resolution in Security Council against that nation. So then, what is the purpose of this body actually?
So that's why I'm saying that is an old idea when they started the UN. That
Hmm.
has to be changed.
Right.
Immediately they had to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I may add a point to that, I totally agree because this UN was formed to prevent from wars. And if you look at the 5 permanent members, there was one country which tried 20 times to get in, finally got in with the support of India, which is China. Currently, if you look at the world GDP, number one is US, which is a top five. I mean, 5 members of permanent seats. Number two GDP is China, which is 17, which again is the number, which is 20 trillion dollar economy, which again is a permanent seat member. Number three is India, with a population of 101.48 billion people, an economy of 17 trillion. I mean, this is 17 trillion GDP. It's unbelievable why India is not a member after the role it played in COVID, providing antibiotics, you name it. I was very involved. This is the time the voices should be raised. And this, sorry to say, this irregularities that any country can veto, this needs to go to garbage, because you cannot make any move against China's operation in Taiwan or Russia's operation in Ukraine. So this will fail the United Nations. Times have changed. It's already 70, close to 70 years have passed. We need to restructure this thing, like Modi ji is saying. I'm totally supporting it. And I will not be ashamed to say this war could have been prevented by the right use and right timing of United Nations resources. Again, you will see within months, they will be sitting again on a table and talking, when hundreds and thousands of people would have been disabled, tens of thousands would have lost their lives, millions would have been displaced. So what is the good out of that conversation? Couldn't it have happened a year ago? Have we not learned from the devastation caused by COVID, an invisible enemy that we have to fight between ourselves and destroy the world when world is going through recession economy?
So, Dheeraj, I'm sorry to
In a country
sort of.
like France, I'm so sorry, $2.6 trillion. France is 66 million people living in France. It's 1/4 of the population of one state like Uttar Pradesh and an economy of 2.6 trillion. What is the role of France being permanent member, or UK? They have fraction of Indian economy and Indian people. So are we saying a French person is 200 times superior than an Indian person? I mean, what is the logic behind all this? It is high time countries sit
So,
down and
so the thing is, who will ask that question? The
we,
question
the
is, yeah.
citizens of the world, have the power to ask it and expose organizations like UN who should have been doing this long ago.
So we, as a citizen of the world, have a lot of responsibilities on our shoulder, and our responsibility becomes active when we are aware of what is happening. So let me stay with the purpose of United Nations, and uh, the four main purposes includes to help nations work together to improve the lives of poor people, to conquer hunger, disease, and literacy, and to encourage respect for each other's rights and freedoms. And finally, it says to be a center for harmonizing the actions of nations to achieve these goals. Now, harmonizing these actions would involve having a balanced point of view in terms of the concerns of member countries, or the potential threats as is perceived by any country should be proactively addressed. That's what Dheeraj was mentioning in the context of Russia. Now, looking at the time constraint, I'll bring the reference of Islamophobia, and what it is a proposal made by Pakistan, and which was passed, that 15th March is proclaimed as the International Day to combat Islamophobia, and the General Assembly in this text um, uh, respected the concerns raised by the representative of Pakistan, who introduced this resolution and said this is for establishing the International Day to combat Islamophobia. And Islamophobia, as per this representative, has emerged as a new form of racism that includes, among others, discriminatory travel bans, hate speech, and the targeting of girls and women for their dress. The text called for expanded international efforts to create a global dialogue that will encourage tolerance and peace centered on respect for human rights and the diversity of religions and beliefs. So many countries had their statements, including a slightly disagreement expressed by France and India, but these 57 Islamic countries supported it, and finally it was passed. So I begin with you, Guru Dileep ji, and let me add the gist of what Indian representative said is that hatred or any kind of discriminatory behavior is not restricted to Islamic followers. It would happen in places against Christians, against Hindus, against Jews, or everyone. So they wanted that it should have everyone be under that umbrella. Why separated? So, what is the genesis of this, Guru Dilip ji? And because you are with Interfaith, talk to me about your reaction, response to this.
Now, I had the resolution through online. Then I was not happy about that because so many phobias around the world. Not only Islamic phobias, Christian phobias, Jewish phobias, Hindu phobias, you know. And why we had to only support one group? We had to support everybody. We don't need any type of phobia against people. That's a UN meant for it. But they made the decision, we cannot do anything, we just support. That's the only thing we can do it. So, and India made few days. We had International Day of Non-Violence on Gandhi's birthday. We have Yoga Day. So they need one day for them too. You know?
No, but see, but yoga is all inclusive, and peace again, non-violence day is all inclusive. But Dheeraj, talk to me about the concern that you coming from Kashmir, as you are aware, what happened there more than many others. Islamophobia has a lot of provisions where I am reminded of the travel ban which was imposed by President Trump earlier, and there are questions about the places where Muslim dress can be observed, and I think France also banned some burqa, etc. So countries have to take action as per the need of security, internal as well external, as is required. And so this way, United Nations coming as an international police without taking into account the concerns that may result a particular country to take certain policy decisions. So this sounds like little little out of the track of harmonizing and addressing the concern of all the countries. These are your take.
Yeah, I think what you're pointing out is very, very important, that there was a component of Islamophobia. I think we saw it during the COVID surge, especially in California, to certain, actually long ago during the World Trade Center attacks. But you have to come back to see, I think, I mean, I don't want to go into this detail, but I think at some point, the community itself has to realize why hatred speeches were done in Kashmir from the masjids, and not one, everywhere. Why was Islam used as a weapon to terrorize minorities anywhere they can? Why is mass conversions or forced conversions a tool to spread hatred and scare? So maybe somewhere an internal dialogue in the community has to happen, especially led by peace-loving Islamic followers, that so that their religion doesn't get tainted as a religion which promotes hatred, hate crimes, human rights violations, and aggressive behavior towards other religion. And I think that's what we saw in Kashmir. If you look at it, I may ask you, 99.9% Kashmiri Hindus have fled the valley, and this violence actually started in 80s. 80, people don't talk about it. 84 to 86, there was a mass killings of Hindus in Anantnag. which was some role to be done by Mufti Muhammad Saeed. And then up till 89 under Rajiv Gandhi and Farooq Abdullah, they were playing between each other and people were getting killed left and right. Temples were burned. So all these issues are very, very real. And honestly speaking, only 0.1800 families are left in Kashmir. But if you look at it, 99.9% Muslim families are there. But they tell that, okay, we are also refugee, which is not true. How many Kashmiri Muslims were killed by Kashmiri Hindus? How many mosques were burned by Kashmiri Hindus? I think zero, if you look into it. So our community is very tolerant, very, very peace-loving. We all believe in education and harmony. But I guess that was taken as a sign of weakness and that we can be converted. And you have to understand this exodus of Kashmir, this genocide and ethnic cleansing of Kashmir has been going on since the time of Islam came in the valley. But currently we are in democracy. Aurangzeb is no more there. There is a democratic government. What were they doing in 84, 86, 91? I think these people need to be brought to justice. It's high time. And I'm very happy that these movies made to expose, and that movie is showing a fraction of what actually happened. You can't see what really happened, and justice has to be brought so that there is a closure in our community. Because you see, external wound you can see, but internal wound which hits your soul and heart, it goes with you till you are alive. There are people who built the state. I mean, 30% of our land in Kashmir was owned by Kashmiri Hindu community in 1947. Now it's less than 0.5%. So is it systematic? Was it done in a planned, organized way? These are the questions which have to be asked. And who will ask these questions? The peace-loving Muslims of the local area. They should get up and ask the leaders of their community, what were you guys doing when this exodus was happening of our brothers and sisters?
So,
eyes on them.
Yeah. So somehow this requires a lot of analytical thinking, introspection, and we only have 3 more minutes to conclude our conversation. So I'll go to Guru Dileep with invoking the spirit of Mahatma Gandhi, and he taking from Bible. I think he said that if somebody slaps you on one cheek, then you offer the another cheek. Now, then some people later on ask question that if rather than slapping on other cheek, he takes away your neck, he cuts your neck, what are you going to do? So anyway, there are multiple ways to address a particular thing, but the UN resolution on Islamophobia, can it be seen as a way whereby if somebody comes and slap you and you say that he slapped me, then they say that you are spreading hatred. So this is exactly what in the case of the Kashmiri files, the kind of response that is being heard. So if you point fingers at someone who is perpetrator of anything, should that right not be a part of a world citizen if you want to develop the environment where people live, think, express freely? Very briefly, Guru Dileep, and then concluding remarks from Dheeraj.
I think when we have real leaders, those who really care about every single person in the country and try to implement the law and order, then everything will be in right path. Otherwise, it's a problem. If one leader only support their party or their culture or the religion, they are not real leaders. A leader should be very neutral. Even UN, anybody at the UN should be neutral. And that's a part I think Modi ji will bring one law for every single Indians. I am looking forward to that.
Your comments, Dheeraj, 30 seconds.
I think, like I earlier mentioned, this is high time India gets its permanent seat in UN, and reshuffling of UN is important. I think I may have misquoted the GDP of India. It was 2.6 trillion,
Correct,
but it's the fastest growing, 8.9% 2021-2022 quarter. Indian people are contributing like anything in healthcare, IT, space, you name it. We deserve a spot in United Nations. We do. 1.4 billion people out of 7.8 billion are coming from India.
I think we, as Indian, need to be counted on these important international forums, and I'm afraid we are running out of time. I really appreciate Dr. Dheeraj and Guru Dileep for joining us. While I thank them and pray for world peace with all of you, thanking you for being a part of this conversation. This is Ashok Vyas.